We're back for another high-ticket tune-up. Happy Wednesday. It's hump day, and check it out. We are still in the body language series. We're moving into the eyes part 2. Hang on. What's happening, Sales Ascender? Sean back at you with another high-ticket tune-up. And in this video, we are going to talk all about the eyes again. We're going to get into some eye blinking, some staring, some gazing, and some other things that you need to know in order to win when you are selling to other people. This is going to be very valuable for you, so stay tuned. Let's dive right into it. So as we remember yesterday, we covered a couple of things, but today we're going to start with blinking. What does blinking mean? How does it work in your world? When you're staring at a prospect across a Zoom screen or in person, what is it that you need to know? The first thing is rates vary based on outside factors. So let me be a little more specific. You might stare at a computer screen all day long. And if you do this, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to blink as much. What happens is the blue light from the computer screens deprives all your oxygen from your eyes without you knowing. You don't feel like you're tired, and then you don't blink as much, and you get dry eyes, and it sucks. So that's why it should make it a habit to stop looking at a screen about every so often and just take a look up around and look other places, just as a kind of a pro tip. Environment, again, if you're in a pollinated area or a dusty area, you're probably gonna be blinking more than you wouldn't be. If you have a tremendous amount of stress, you're going to see people, specifically prospects, if they're under a lot of stress, you'll see them, they will start to blink more often. So Sean, what are the numbers that we got to look at? Well, the typical rate for blinking is anywhere from 16 blinks to 20 blinks per minute. And so when you see somebody blinking less than this, that's an indicator for you to understand like what's going on with them. Why are they doing this, right? And if they're blinking more than this, there's some other reasons why. So here's a pro tip. Again, I mentioned this. If you stare at screens all day, you definitely want to take a break and look away from the screen. So again, one of the reasons why somebody might not blink in a conversation, for example, they might be staring or gazing at you, which I'll get into in a second here. But the more important thing is to remember that the screen itself is actually an outside environmental factor that could be creating less blinks than the 16 to 20 per minute. Now, if they're blinking more than that, just a couple of things. If you have contacts in your eyes, that might cause you to blink more. Again, if there's dust in your house, it might, or in the meeting room or whatever, you might blink more. And pro tip here, if you're dating or courting somebody else that you like, if they blink more than 16 to 20 blinks in a minute, and if you can non-suspiciously count this, then you're doing really well. But 16 to 20 blinks per minute, if you find them, they're on average blinking more than that, guess what? That probably means they're roused by you. So just like look for eye blinking. It's an interesting indicator. It's a very easy thing to watch on somebody and how they talk. You're probably like looking at how I'm blinking right now too. So let's move on to eye contact. What does eye contact mean? How should we do it? When should we make it? What does it mean? How does it interact with the face? Well, first of all, understand there's a big difference with facial structure. So you have to, it's in context of the face. When you're looking at somebody looking at you, your peripherals need to observe the rest of the face. And so first and foremost, eye contact is governed by culture. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, if you're in prison, you're probably not going to stare at the more aggressive people in prison simply because that's not probably the best thing that you could do. So that's a kind of just an example of how eye contact is actually governed by a culture. In America, it's different. In Philippines, Japan, China, it's all different when it comes to eye contact. Here is some tips on the length of eye contact. This is the practical stuff that you can use in your business today. 3 to 4 seconds is normal. So if remember, as we're a sales professional, we're having a conversation with a prospect and we're looking at them, like take a second, look at them for about 3 to 4 seconds and then look away or look down or blink a couple of times or type something on your keyboard. Like that's a pretty normal amount of time to stare at somebody, especially in the bonding and connecting stage of the conversation. Now, as the conversation goes longer and you get towards the end, then it's going to be different. Then staring at somebody in the face for a little bit longer is okay. Typically what I do, because we're on Zoom most of the time, is I'll just stare at my screen and then I'll just spot check their face and their body language just down in the Zoom window. So my camera is here when I'm on Zoom, right below where I'm looking. So if I'm looking right at you now, right here where my hands are at, if you could see those, that's where people are. So when I look down like this, I'm actually looking at the guy on the slide deck right now. So you can see how I'm not looking at the camera, which means I'm not looking at you. So just one of the things to think about when you're having a Zoom meeting, be present and focus on looking at that camera 3 to 4 seconds, then do a spot check on the face, maybe look over here if you're taking notes. Just break it from time to time. It's going to hold better rapport than if you just stare at the camera the whole time. Quick note here, 2 seconds or more can be considered rude if you're looking or you're making eye contact for about 2 seconds or more in some cultures. Now, again, in North America market, 3 to 4 seconds normal. That's what it is. Most of the world is the same way. But again, in certain places, 2 seconds or more can be considered rude. So here's when people want to do some eye avoidance. Eye avoidance is it means, number one, like, hey, put yourself in an airplane, right? When you first walk in an airplane and you're sitting down and there's 2 seats open next to you and you're in the aisle seat and you don't want nobody to sit in those seats next to you, guess what do? You're not looking at anybody walking down the aisle, because if you make eye contact with them, they're more likely to say, hey, can I sit there, right? And so inconvenient to chat. That's a great example. I know you've probably done it. I've done it. I'm so guilty of that one. Secondly, embarrassment. So if you're watching somebody and they do something you consider embarrassing, you're going to stop looking at them. It's just a natural instinct most of the time that it happens. And likewise, when you do something embarrassing, typically you stop looking at other people. And what I suggest is if something happens that's out of the ordinary, focus on your eye contact first. Just boom, hit them with the eye contact. So you just make it seem like it's not a big deal. It's a really powerful tool as a sales professional you can use when you're speaking with your prospect. If you're in flesh, right, and something happens, you do something embarrassing, call yourself out. Like, you look at the person and be like, did you see that? And then they'll laugh. And then now you have great rapport with that person, right? So that's a little pro tip there. And of course, we avoid eye contact with strangers. We were always taught, the record in our head is don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers. Yet we all move into the sales profession. And guess what we got to go do? We got to talk to strangers. So we had to break that record. And sometimes a lot of people have trouble actually starting to have eye contact with people, but it isn't because they're a stranger, and it's because it's a record from the past in our life. It can also indicate shame. That's just one of the things I want to share there. If you feel shame, typically you won't look at other people. But what I suggest is just focus on, hey, boom, do it for 2 to 3 seconds and then look away. It usually breaks that pattern. So pattern interrupt the eye contact, and then you can hold better rapport, even if it's something that you're shameful about. So let's talk about gazing versus staring. I know this GIF is a little bit crazy, but it's good to know this stuff. So what is staring versus gazing? Staring tends to be impersonal. This is where you just kind of look through somebody's soul. If you've ever been in that spot late at night when you've had a lot of drinks and you're just staring at somebody, or they've had a lot of drinks and you're staring at them and it looks like they're looking right through you, that's staring, right? It tends to be very impersonal and just cold. And you can typically tell by the rest of the face muscles if they just are kind of like flat, like, right, versus looking like this with a smile on their face. So you can see immediately as I just do that with my face, like, there's a big difference, right? So staring is, and then gazing is going to have different facial structure, which is cool. Second thing, when you're staring at somebody, it kind of means suspicion. So imagine if you're sitting in a bus driving down the road and there's some criminal trying to break into a building, like, you're going to stare at that person. And just think about how your face looks when you do that, because then you'll understand what a stare is versus what a gaze, right? Also, it can be alarming. You can stare at something out of terror or fear, alarm. And or if something just looks odd, typically you look at a lot. This is why a lot of artwork is powerful, especially the abstract artwork that's out there. So now, what's the difference between staring and gazing? Gazing is when somebody's taking comfort in what you're saying. Typically, you'll see all the muscles around the eyes kind of bend away from gravity. Remember that, that's a tip. Like, anything that goes away from gravity typically means a positive thing in your world. So when you're staring at someone, remember, smile. It's really important to do that, right? Because if you indicate that as a subconscious move as a sales professional, other people are going to be more accepting of you. A lot of people I've done it. I know Chris has done it. I've seen him do it. But a lot of people get so intently engaged in the conversation, they forget to wear the smile, right? And so it's just another thing to remember. It's like, make eye contact and smile. It's like a quick just anchor for myself when I'm like, eye contact, smile. Eye contact, smile. That's it. So gazing is taking comfort. Also, it gives people an inviting look. For example, if you're on that airplane again and you got the seats open, you don't care if someone sits, like, just look at the people and then, like, hey, you want to sit here? Like, it's like, hey, I'm gazing at you, right? One last pro tip here I want to share is just when people close their eyes. So a couple of things that happen when people close their eyes. Number one, it will typically indicate they're more audio versus visual, right? So they think through sound versus through vision, which is a good thing to know. When people close their eyes for a longer period of about 2 seconds or more, like I'm doing right now, then this typically means it's a blocking behavior. And even deaf kids, when they hear something they don't like, they cover their eyes. It's really interesting there's a big study that was done on that. So it's just something to think about. But with that said, that is the difference between gazing and staring. And we just went through blinking, eye contact, gazing, and staring today. And we're going to be back tomorrow to cover more of the eyes, because there's so much that we can learn just from watching our prospects' eyes. Don't forget, smash that like button for sure. Share this out to someone who cares. Subscribe to the channel. And don't forget, you've just been tuned up, and there is a sales ascender inside of each and every one of you. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. And with that said, we will see you later.